So I stumbled across some more stories about Les Paul and this guy Jim that he was good friends with, and this channel is Fantastic Tales of Pro Audio, but I consider Les Paul a pro audio guy, so I thought you guys would be interested in these little story and snippets of this guy talking about the guitars that Les Paul gave him. So at the end of this, I'll play the videos, and there's I think 4 or 5 guitars, and each one of them had a little story to it, and I just thought that was incredibly interesting. The one guitar that he has, I think it's called a pulverizer. It's a little box that went in the back of his guitar, and it controlled a tape machine backstage. So it was this looping device. So he would play a part and then hit a switch and then play a part on top of it, all from the guitar on stage. And people thought the box was doing all this work. But it seems like it was a remote control for a tape machine that was going on in the background. And it looks big and clunky, and the guy says, it's very heavy. And but Les Paul made 2 of them. He kept one on the West Coast and one on the East Coast because they were just so heavy to carry around. But just all the innovation that this guy came up with is just fascinating to me. So I hope you enjoy this.
The next guitar I got from Les over the course of a year, he would take me around his house and show me different things he did, the railroad track, how he invented the electric guitar. He'd show me different ideas that he had and how he implemented them into the music industry. And he said, I want to show you a real special guitar. So we went into the studio, and the guitar was in a case, and he brought it out. And he said, open it up. So I took it and I played it, and I was like, wow, this is a solid body. And I didn't know guitars at the time. I said, it's just like the 52. He goes, it's a 53 ES295. He said, it's very rare because it's only one of few that have Les Paul model inscribed on the tailpiece. He goes, this is probably the prettiest guitar that I own. And with that, he said, I want you to take care of it for me and put it under your bed for a rainy day. And I said, Les, I can't take it. He said, do me the favor. He said, protect it and take care of it for that rainy day. And he said, this is probably the prettiest guitar I own. So he put it on a stand, and we went back to the kitchen counter and had something to eat. And it was getting to be a regular thing. Go to Les's house, see something, go to the counter. So as I was ready to leave, he said, you got to go get the guitar. So we went back into the studio, and as I went to get the guitar, I noticed that the inlay was burned. There was a light above it, and it had burned the inlay. And I said, Les, we ruined the guitar. I said, can you call someone and have it fixed? He goes, hell no, Jimmy. He goes, it gives that guitar character. And so I left it like that. And that's the way the guitar plays, it stays. And that's probably another gem of the collection. It was 1999. I went over to Les Paul's house. And it was a regular routine. Go to his house, you sit at the kitchen counter, you have a drink, you talk with Les. But Les always had a guitar in his kitchen. And it was usually a guitar he'd take out of his collection and he'd tune it up, put it back. So his guitars were very well taken care of. And it was a treat to go to his house because you didn't know what was going to show up in the kitchen next. So I went to the house, and in the kitchen was this guitar. Now the guitar was in a stand just like it is, and it had a piece of paper back here in the tailpiece. And most of Les's guitars on the back, he could flip them over, and he usually had a piece of tape on it. And it would say G1 through G400, whatever it was in his collection. But I flipped the guitar over, and it had a name on a piece of tape, not a number. So he went in the back room to get on the phone, and I picked the guitar up. I plugged it into his amplifier, and I started playing it. And I'm looking at the name on this piece of paper and the name on that. So Les came out, he said, hey, what do you think? I said, why is this here? Where's your guitar? He said, I broke the truss rod in my guitar, so I took this out of collection. This is going to be my practice guitar till Gibson gives me my house guitar back. So I said, what's with the guitar? He said, well, in 1995, Gibson came out with the Jimmy Page reissue. And during production, they had a problem with the pickups. So what happened was Gibson sent me this guitar, and they said, can you try to figure out the problem we got with our pickups? So what Les did, he took the electronics out, he took the pickups out. He hand wound these pickups and redid the entire electronic board of this guitar. He got the sound he wanted. The guitar was sent Over to England, Jimmy looked at it, played it. According to Les, he put the gold hardware because Jimmy liked gold hardware. The guitar was brought back to Les as a gift from Gibson. But every time I would go to his house, I'd go in the kitchen and I just played a guitar in it. And one day I went over to Les's house, took him to the doctor for a flu shot. So as I go back in the house, I drop him off. He said, wait a minute, I got something for you. So I look in the kitchen and there's a burgundy guitar there. I said, what's that? He goes, well, Gibson got my guitar back and I had it repainted that beautiful burgundy color. I said, cool. And I didn't mention anything about this guitar. I was heartbroken it was out of the kitchen. So as I walked to the door, he said, hey, where are you going? I said, I'm going home. Why? He goes, hey, you forgot something. And he handed this to me. He said, you liked it so much, here it is. This is your guitar. I said, Les, you're kidding me. He goes, put it under your bed for a rainy day. And it's just a classic. It's all handcrafted by Les. But what he also did is he handed me the schematics for the guitar. These are the actual schematics that Les hand drew with everything that goes inside this guitar. It's got a Jimmy Page backstage pass. As I walked out of the house, he said, you can't have a Jimmy Page guitar without some Jimmy Page memorabilia. So he had this backstage pass, and it was one that he cherished. He said, Jimmy Page gave me it, and he said, you gotta have it with the guitar. I said, that's cool. He said, I got another thing for you. I said, what's that? He said, back in the early 80s, there was a guitar show, and they did an interview at my house, and it was called The Guitar Show, and Jimmy Page was on it. And they interviewed me and Jimmy Page in my studio. And Jimmy Page used this stool. He goes, that's got to go with the guitar. So the stool, the backstage pass, and the guitar came, and that's part of my collection. Circa 1968-69, Les comes back to Gibson with a new contract. They come out with they got the custom, but they want to come out with a new brand of guitar. Gibson, along with Les, decided they're going to come out with a Les Paul, but they wanted to come out with a new model, and they called it the Deluxe model. The Deluxe model had 2 humbucker pickups, but they were mini humbucker pickups. They weren't the regular size pickups. Les got this. This is a prototype. It has no serial number. It's an actual pancake model is what they came out with in 68, 69, and later came out with the actual line in, I think it was 1970. What Les did is he took the guitar and had Gibson put in low impedance pickups in it. Everything was custom for Les. He put the switches on it, the decade switch. But what Les did, he attached this little black box. This little black box was Les's invention back in the 50s, and it worked with his 8-track recorder. He called it the Les Pulverizer. And what it was nothing more than a looping device where Les could play, but he could hit a button, record to the machine which was behind stage. He could sing in the microphone, he could rewind it and play the lick back. He could actually be on stage and play 8 or 9 tracks and multiply them and have an orchestra on stage. The people thought the guitar was magic. They thought the little black box was magic. But actually what it was just a looping device to the tape machine in the back. And with all the electronics in it, I brought it to Gibson about 2 years ago. And they opened up the back of the guitar. And the factory production stopped for about 2 hours because everybody was just amazed with the electronics in the back of this guitar. If you look, the back plate barely fits on. There's so much stuffed into there. There's an actual TV tube that Les used in this guitar. There were 2 of these. One was kept on the East Coast and one was kept on the West Coast. This was a West Coast guitar because it was so heavy to lug around, and Les was getting older and it was just heavy for him. So he left it out in California. So whenever he traveled cross country, he didn't have to bring a guitar. He had one out there. It's an XLR jack that Les installed. He gouged out the top of the guitar and put the XLR jack in it. He got a microphone, and he attached the microphone to it, and he could actually sing through the microphone, talk through it instead of having a microphone, because that was back in the day before, the remote ones. And this way he could walk wherever he wanted and have the microphone right with him. It's a 1987 Les Paul 1959 reissue. And what had happened, I was at Les's house with a friend of mine and a friend of Les's. His name was Joe Ulrich. And Joe was another guy like me who was a dear friend of Les Paul's. But Joe knew a little bit about the technical stuff about appliance repair, and just Joe had the knack for fixing things. So one day we had a problem with the furnace, and I didn't know about the furnace. So I got a hold of Joe and I said, come on over, I want to introduce you to Les and help fix the furnace. So we went over to Les's house, introduced him to Les, and Les took to Joe like he did me. I mean, it was a bonding just like I had with him. So as we're talking, he looked at Joe and he said, Joe, when were you born? He said, November. He said, no, what year? He said, 59. Why? He goes, wait a minute. He goes, for doing the work, I want to give you something. So Les went upstairs, came down with a guitar case, and on the guitar case it had written Tiger Stripe 59. I looked at Joe, I said, if that's a 59 Les Paul, I'm going to mug you in the parking lot. And he said, Joe, he goes, happy birthday. And he handed this guitar to him. It's an actual 1959 reissue. It's an 87, it's a second line. And Les marked it on the back from his collection is G106 from Les's actual collection. He autographed the pickguard, which we actually put it on when it was in the Mawa Museum, but since then we had taken it off just for display, just so they could see the actual tiger stripe. That's what Les called it, because it had such a beautiful grain to the guitar. And that's probably the nicest, what people say, the nicest sounding guitar out of the entire collection. In 1993, I was over at Les's house. And to see Les's house, you have to get the image of a house with nothing but boxes, Gibson boxes, amplifiers. And the first 2 years I met Les, we went through 7 or 8 40-yard dumpsters cleaning out his house. And it was basically boxes of stuff. So in 1993, I was over at Les's house, and he said, Jimmy, open that box over there. And it was a guitar box, and it had a case in it, and this guitar was in it. He said this was a 1993 Studio Les Paul, and he said he loved it because of the wine color. He said, someday I'm going to get my guitar to be that color. He goes, I just love the color. And he said, how do you like it? I said, it's gorgeous. All your guitars are gorgeous. So he got out a white pen. He goes, I want to give this to you. I said, Les, you give me enough. I said, I don't need any more guitars. I don't play that well. He said, nonsense. So he took out a white pen marker and a paint marker. And he said, I'm going to write something on it. So he took the pen, he shook it up, and he pressed down on the guitar, and the tip of the pen broke, and white paint went all over the guitar. So he's panicked. He got some lacquer thinner with a rag. He started wiping the paint, but it started wiping the finish off. So he said, give me the phone right away. So I gave him the phone, and he called the number, and he said, hey, Tommy. Tommy Doyle was his guitar luthier. He was his guitar tech. He said, I spilled paint on a guitar, and I used lacquer thinner to get it off, and, oh, I shouldn't use lacquer thinner. Naphtha is what I should use. He's like, okay. So he hangs the phone up, and he said, Jimmy, I just screwed up your guitar. I said, no, you screwed up your guitar. So I left the guitar there, and a week later I went back, and Tommy Doyle redid the entire guitar, and he autographed it and put a clear coat on it, and that's another one I got from Les over the years.